Hi, you've reached Call Your Publicist, your go-to source for PR moves, media moments, and brand strategies that keep businesses and people in the headlines for the right reasons. I'm one of your hosts, Jenna Guarneri, CEO and founder of James G Public Relations.
And I'm your co-host, Alexandra Anastasio. Let's start talking.
Have you ever struggled with a problem? It doesn't have to be major, yet it drives you crazy, and you think to yourself, there has to be a solution. Yet most people will never take the thought a step further and actually do something about it.
Our guest today is someone who did. Justin Baer is the CEO and founder of Collars & Co., the Shark Tank-backed menswear brand, best known for reinventing the modern dress shirt with its structured collar.
Justin started the business after getting frustrated with how the collars on his dress shirt would collapse or look sloppy when worn under sweaters or jackets. He saw a gap and built a brand to solve the problem. Justin's story is a masterclass in modern entrepreneurship, innovation, and brand building. Let's dive in. First, I have to say we love this founder's story. As you just mentioned, you were working in corporate, and a lot of the founders we talk to, they all say they were dealing with some sort of problem, right? They noticed something in the market or in, the industry that they wanted to fix. And so I'm sure, many other men wearing the traditional, dress shirts, dealing with the, putting a jacket over it, putting a sweater over it, and having that, that issue of like it not standing up straight. And it's where you built, your idea came from for Collars & Co. So can you tell us, was there an aha moment where you're like, I have to do something about this? Because I'm sure so many men were saying the same thing, but you actually did something about it.
Yeah. My story goes back a little ways. So always as a kid, always being an entrepreneur, I tell the story like most kids got Sports Illustrated. I got like the Wall Street Journal. My parents were very involved and they were always so, they were very okay with me pursuing things that were non-traditional, as entrepreneurship, whereas instead of like going to law school, you should do this. It's like, hey, if you have an idea, great. My dad took me to the Patent Museum when I was a little kid because I had this idea for an invention. So, or the patent office, I should say, in Virginia. I lived in New York for 12 years and built a software company. And everything, on paper kind of was looking good. Then I actually lost my mom, I lost my dad, I lost my stepdad in a very close period of time. And it made me think about how kind of fragile life is and how little time we have. And I was always a go-getter. I was always running, but now it's like, I don't have much to lose. Not that I don't have much to lose, but it's just like, I'm going to go after it. And I've always felt like I was destined for something more. And then COVID hit and I was kind of sitting around and always come up with ideas. I'm like, you know what? I had this idea when I was living in New York, where I was wearing what I'm wearing right now, which is like the Midtown uniform. You're wearing a dress shirt under a sweater. It's annoying. The sleeves always get bunched up. You're pulling it down. I'm like, it would be so much nicer if I could wear a t-shirt, but that doesn't give you that collar look. So I'm like, I'm going to make a polo shirt and I'm going to put a firm collar on it like I have right now. And I just made these and I just did it. It wasn't perfect. And at the time, my 7-year-old daughter was like into dance. She's like, Dad, you got to do a TikTok video. I'm like, all right. So she's like holding the phone in my closet. And I'm like, guys, don't you wear dress shirts? They suck. They're hot. They just get bunched up. Check out one of these dress collar polos. And then I was sitting down to watch Netflix that night with my wife. And when you're on Shopify, you get like a little ka-ching when a sale comes through and the thing went off. I was like, oh my God, someone else had this idea, thought this was a good idea. And the thing kind of exploded from there. The first month, I think we did 40,000 in sales off of one shirt with one color.
Wow.
So it was off to the races and things got out of hand pretty quickly. Now we're a full menswear brand with 6 stores and TV, it's gotten crazy.
That's amazing. And I love that this grew out of the pandemic because there were so many things that people learned about themselves and that they created during that time when, there was so much craziness. So what made you say, I have something that's going to be much bigger? You're like, you had that one sale, but what made you take it to where it is today? How did you know? Did you ever even expect it to grow to what it is today?
I didn't know what to expect. My expectations grew as the business grew, but I just felt this velocity around this idea. Like I didn't test this idea. I think actually, not that I don't say to test ideas, and obviously entrepreneurs and people come to me with ideas all the time. And what I see them do a lot is wait for it to be perfect before they even start. Like that is a recipe for never going to happen. So I guess I did this. It wasn't perfect. And then I would really test things out. I'd say, okay, well, if they liked white, let me see what happens in blue. And then blue would start selling. And then I go, well, maybe black. And then I'm like, well, I love my favorite blue houndstooth shirt in my closet. Let me see what happens. So it would be testing out, right? I'd always be testing these ideas. If it's worked, we just keep layering it on. And then it was like, well, why don't we make pants? Let's see what happens there. And then a blazer you can roll up in a ball. And it just snowballed from there. But it didn't go from 0 to 100 this fast.
I love how you said that your daughter had you film that TikTok and that's what kind of blew up. So I feel like your 7-year-old kind of started the trend, so to speak, and really maybe was your first salesperson if you want to look at it like that. But would you say once you did that, how did that moment change things for you? And did it really affect the way in which, because it shows you how you reach an audience, right? Like this is where your audience is living and this is where they are. So how would you say, did you start to think differently about social and how you can reach your customers or a new audience?
Yeah, I think it taught me that authenticity probably beats perfection. That people want to definitely learn about the story. You've got to have a product that's really solving a problem.
Yep.
And I think that's what we did. So, yeah, I think I leaned into the kind of the more human side, and you'll see that definitely there's a progression of my Instagram throughout the years. We have 500,000 followers now, but it go back, the earlier videos look nothing like my videos now, but
that's okay. I think too on social, what people want is they want to connect with someone that's authentic. They don't want to see polished and perfect all the time because let's face it, we're not all polished and perfect all the time. So I think even if they were to kind of, I always say when you go down the rabbit hole on somebody's social media and you start seeing older posts, older, content, it's okay because they see, okay, look at the evolution. They're going through your journey with you, right? They see where you started and now they're watching it grow. And I think for anybody, especially if you're a founder or somebody who has an idea, that's inspiring because they see where you started and where you're going. So that gives people hope, I think, that they can do it too.
That's such a parallel for how we're thinking about the brand now, is that, the brand's definitely transitioning to more of a lifestyle brand. And like, what do we stand for? What does our hotel look like? We opened a restaurant. What would it be? And we really stand for not just clothes, but we stand for transformation. And we help guys go from A to B. It's like guys that just are dressing average. They kind of don't care anymore. It's this casualization of America. What I wear doesn't matter. And they're growing out of this to say, okay, actually it really does. All the statistics show it. And we're kind of helping guys transform into the guy they knew they could be, or they always were. And the clothes are just a tool. But yeah, when you talk about the transformation, yeah, they're kind of seeing that along with the brand and the brand's growth too.
I love what you said just now about what you stand for, because we talk a lot about that in PR, where in order to build a brand, you need to first start with, who are you? What do you stand for? What are your values? And obviously you have a very strong brand. So it's amazing to see that and to hear that you've incorporated that into your thought span as you're building out the brand and growing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one of the things we definitely have to talk about is your experience on Shark Tank. Very cool. And what I find interesting too is we actually had interviewed maybe a month or so, a little while ago, another founder who had also appeared on Shark Tank, and she was offered a deal, but she walked away from it because knowing inside it wasn't right for her in the long run. But you have that like split second, I imagine, to make this big, could be life-altering decision. So what's it like having to make that decision in what is probably seconds? Like, I can't even imagine standing in front of them and
too much pressure.
Yeah, too much pressure. And then if somebody asked me to make a decision, I don't think I could do it in that quick a time.
I mean, the whole Shark Tank experience is intense. It is intense. It's terrifying. I remember I got there on set and they're like, okay, you're ready to go. And I was like, okay, great. Do I have can I just practice the pitch real fast? They're like, no, we're going on in like 2 minutes. I'm like, what? It's almost like they're setting you up for like this crazy experience. And I went in there thinking, God, I'm offering this great deal. and they're really going to throw you off. They offered me half of what I wanted. I was like, oh my God, what is this really happening? Am I going to be that person that walks off the show without a deal? I'm like, I cannot do this. So, but I guess your instincts take over. I always say, like, I'm glad I memorized my pitch because I don't know what was coming out of my mouth. Your mind was going really blank. And I felt like, you know what? You've got two billionaires that were going to jump on the deal. I was only going to give away 10%. A lot of times these Shark Tank deals, they want half, they want a quarter. And so I don't know. It just like my gut took over and we did the deal. And it was a great show, right? So everyone has to understand Shark Tank is a show. They care about the show. The producer cares about the show. You're just a pawn in the show. And it's got to be great television. And I look back at the show now and it's like very intense. And the music, I'm like, I don't remember that music playing. Like, I think I said that like farther away from when it happened. They're going to edit however they want. But turned out it was a great experience. And I'm glad we did the deal. Most people don't realize actually is that even if you get a deal on the show, most of these deals don't close. Like half the time the entrepreneurs could be lying. The sharks want to do their own due diligence. So they don't really close. Our deal closed, and Mark and Peter have been awesome, and crazy how like available Mark is. I mean, he's just on his phone all the time. But it was life-changing. I'm glad we did it. And I still have nightmares about it, even to this day, about like, oh my God, what if I didn't do that? And I but it worked out.
That's awesome. And you know what? I'm so curious too, is to hear about your perspective on what was the relationship like after Shark Tank with your investors, right? How did you manage that? And of course, that was probably a learning curve of learning how to figure out how to manage that type of scenario.
I mean, these are, Mark and Peter, they're great. Great investors don't run your business, but they maybe help you think better. Mm-hmm. And, their lessons probably weren't tactical, but it's about scaling brand, patience, cash flow. Mark's constantly asking me about that. But, I think good investors respect what they respect that I know their customer and I respect their experience. So it's been great so far.
So being on the show obviously had to bring you a new level of visibility, right? It puts you in front of a whole audience. Besides the deal itself, right, that you got from the show, what would you say changed for you after the show aired?
So, I mean, like the show is like fuel on your fire. I mean, we were going, but the thing totally exploded. We got traffic and orders and a ton of attention. And I would say like Shark Tank opens the door for you. And then it's, what are you going to do? It's execution keeps it open. And so, once the cameras leave, it's like, hey, is the product good enough? You got to have a great product. Right. That's only going to go so far on, kind of PR momentum. But, yeah, I mean, we hunkered down and built a company around it. We went from one shirt. Now our polo shirt is, it's a percentage of our business, but it's way less than half of all of our sales. So we kind of took that kind of like Under Armour did, right? They started with one little t-shirt and kind of built a brand about it. And that's kind of how we're thinking about Collars & Co.
Yeah, and I also love too, because now beyond that, you have partnerships. So you have a collegiate line. How did you decide to incorporate these partnerships, and how do you figure out what's right for the brand as you grow?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, we think about who aligns with us, the values they have. Authenticity is really key. We also did a deal where the official performance dress shirt of the Arrow McLaren race team, IndyCar team. So, it's things that I think our customer is going to really align with and think are cool and elevate our brand and brand associations. And that's how we go about. Same with people too. We've got some ambassadors like Greg Olson and Tiki Barber, Bill Rancic. These are our guys that kind of fit what we think is an ideal customer for us.
I was going to ask you about that because I noticed in, your social media obviously plays a huge part. If we go onto the company's social media, you see a lot of that lifestyle. And you see these well-known names, some celebrities, some, business well-known. So how do you decide who you're going to collaborate with? And how do you make sure those partnerships or those people that you work with feels authentic while you're continuing to expand and grow the brand? And also, is there anyone on your wish list that you haven't yet partnered with?
Yeah, we definitely have people on our wish list for sure. Kind of what we said before, right? Authenticity is non-negotiable.
Right.
If someone wouldn't wear it without being paid, it's not going to work. It's really the X factor. It's it's our ambassadors at their parties talking with their celebrity friends saying, "Oh my God, you guys got to check the shirt out." And then they'll text me like, "Hey, can you send a shirt to this guy? I mean, here's the address." That's when it really makes it worth it. Where if you're just paying him for posts, I just think that business is dead. The idea of just paying somebody for 3 posts, I mean, unless they have 10 million plus
Right.
fans, which some people do, maybe, whoever that would be, Brad Pitt or whatever, of course, whatever he posts is going to work. But, people with under 1 million fans, just posting about you, there's no guarantee. It's not like the old days where they could post and guarantee you get views. Now it's, I don't know, you have serious giant accounts getting 10,000 views on a video. Like imagine you paid $30,000 for that to be a total waste. So
Right.
I think the game's kind of changing. I hope the influencers are realizing that. And it's got to be much more authentic and more of a collaborative ambassadorship.
Definitely. There's a lot about trust. We talk about trust. And so I think you hit the nail on the head is that for people, if you're using, or in your case, like wearing the shirt or they're talking about it, people on the receiving end will say, oh, wow, so-and-so is walking the walk, so to speak. They're wearing the shirt. They're telling me, hey, I'm wearing this. Trust me. This is going to do what it says, or you're going to be able to do X, Y, and Z. So if you don't believe in a product, I think people can read through that. If you're just holding it and saying like, oh, I use this.
Yeah.
But do you? And do I feel that connection? So.
Right. Exactly.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about leadership because obviously growing from a startup to now a fast-growing menswear brand in just a couple of years, what has been the toughest part about leading people while building the culture and everything that you envisioned for the brand?
I would say the hardest part for me, and my other businesses were small, is really letting go. The early days, you're doing everything. I mean, literally everything. So it's, as you scale, you can't do everything. You have to find people you trust and then delegate to them and then realize it's about hiring people smarter than you. And you hear that all the time. Like, oh, now I fully get it. Like I've got to find people that obviously are much smarter than I am and great in their specific field and hope that I pick great people and let them run with it. And so far it's been great. And we had a giant year last year. And I would say last year's, every year we're adding on people, but last year we added on a lot more people and it's really helped free me up to think kind of bigger and larger brand concepts. And so I would say, that's been the hardest part.
Yeah, and we talk about that a lot too, is that having that energy as a founder is really important. That way you're allowing yourself to think bigger, and those are the things that you need in order to keep growing the company and adding in different layers to it that you may not have thought of. So it's really important to hire the right people for the right seats.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think too, just in general, like obviously getting an investment is exciting, right? You're growing, your brand is growing, you're scaling, but with that, I'm sure comes some other surprises that maybe you didn't anticipate, right? Because you're growing and you're like, okay, I'm expanding my team or I'm expanding my locations, whatever it is, or whatever industry you're in. So were there any surprises for you along the way that you're like, okay, I got this, this investment, it's really exciting. We're now changing in terms of we're going into a full, menswear line. Was there anything that stood out to you or that surprised you along the way in that in this journey?
Yeah, I think you get investment, everything moves faster, expectations rise, and when you're growing really fast, which is difficult to do, not just from a marketing standpoint, that's one side. The other side is, can you handle the growth? And I think the growth really exposes your weaknesses that probably you didn't know you had, and kind of figure out where the cracks are, which is uncomfortable but totally necessary. I feel like the way I run it, it's very calm. We have some people on the team that maybe are used to reaction. And I said, you know what? This problem is great. Like you bring problems to me, I'm like, this is awesome, because a problem means we have something we can fix and we can make it better. Like it's nothing we can do about what just already happened, but now we can kind of fix the problem. So it's like, if you have a problem, that's awesome. That's great. Let's figure it out. Why did it happen? How can we solve it? which is going to make us so much better. And so I would say that growth kind of exposes these cracks pretty quickly.
I think that's awesome.
It is. That's awesome. And so, looking back at the early days in your journey, what's one lesson you'd want anyone to start a business to know, and one thing you're glad you didn't overthink?
I think you kind of said it. What I touched on before is maybe starting before you're ready. I think, the clarity comes from movement, maybe you could say. And if you always wait for that perfect timing, for the product just to be perfect, the company would exist. We're on like version 8 of our shirt. Imagine if we waited till version 3. Like, we're already way past that. Like, just see if your thing is going to sell. That's what I always tell people. Put it out there. I don't care if you have the product yet. Make a website, put a button on it that says buy now, take people's credit cards, and then call them back and say, you know what? The product never came in. Here's a refund. But then you get a sense of, can your product sell? If it can sell, then you have something, versus waiting so long. Get a minimal viable product. Don't wait forever to just try it out. And kind of getting back to the original story, which is, we don't have much to lose here. Like,
Right.
just go for it. Like, who cares? It didn't work out. You know what? You're trying something most people have never done in their whole lives. Like, a lot of people are worried. Oh, what are they going to say? What are my friends going to say? I'm a failure. Like, I've had 50 businesses like that. You're watching the one that's like working. I've had so many ideas that didn't work, and you learn so much. I'm like, well, worst case scenario is you learned a ton, and you're going to come up with some other idea. So I don't want to be cliche, but like that, kind of go for it, or just do
It's
it.
so funny. We were just talking about another founder about this exact thing, is
Yes.
that not over analyzing and overthinking the business plan and will this work, and doing all the research. It's just diving in.
Yeah.
It's so important. And that, I think, so many people get stuck on.
Yeah.
And it's so important that you learn as you go. And the best learning experience, I think, is that being in it and figuring out in real time. I think that's important.
And
Absolutely.
I think, I'm not a founder or an entrepreneur, but in talking to founders and entrepreneurs, I feel like I hear that same message. Just go for it. And I love that, because I know I always overthink everything. So I'd still be on like shirt 10 probably. But it's encouraging and inspiring. And I hope anyone who is listening, who is thinking about starting something or does have an idea for something, and maybe is like me, who's overanalyzing and says, you know what? I just listened to this podcast. I am going to go for it, because you never know, because I'm sure there's somebody else thinking about that too. So let me just take that chance. And it's inspiring to hear stories like yours, because you didn't just wait for version 3. You just went forward with the first one and said, I'm going to do as I go along. So that's awesome.
Yeah. What's the famous quote? They say, like, perfection is the enemy of good. Right. So, I totally agree. I mean, look, if we're talking millions of dollars and you have to make it, maybe you're doing that. But the cool thing with the internet now and social media is you can really test these ideas and have a proving ground before, to get a good sense of, hey, is there something, is there some traction here?
This is awesome, Justin. I've enjoyed chatting with you. Thank you so much for your time. How can our viewers and our listeners find you and find Collars & Co?
Yeah, thanks for having me. You can go to collarsandco.com. We've got all kinds of polo shirts and quarter zips now, and blazers. And then check us out on social. We've got a pretty fun page. And that's Collars & Co Clothing is our handles on TikTok.
Awesome.
And Instagram.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. This was fun. We appreciate
Thank you
your
guys.
time.
Thank you.